Bam. Okay, party people. Today, I am extremely privileged to have one of the greatest minds I've ever come across in this world, man, on my show here tonight, party people. You know, I like bringing the knowledge, teaching you some things you ain't never heard before, pushing the envelope, opening your third eye as wide as it could go. We're going to do that tonight, party people. I got my good man joining me all the way from the East Coast. We got a scholar, a real life Da Vinci coder. My main man is coming to the stage, and so much other accolades and understandings and knowledge and perspectives, man. We about to dig in, party people. Please give it up for my good homie Earle Mitchell.
My man Mike.
What up?
What's going on, Doctor? Good to be here, man. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Oh man, I love it, man. You know, man, I really feel good about this. I've been waiting for this discussion, man, because you have so much knowledge, and it's like, we all sponges out here for the game, man. We need it, bro. We need you. You know what I mean?
Love you, brother.
We
Appreciate
need
it.
you. How you been doing, bro?
Doing well, in my 50s, still doing 200 push-ups a day, running 3 miles a day, trying to keep it as tight as possible. Got more to do, but happy to be here. Kids getting big, that's the focus.
Damn,
And just
okay, now hold on. We're not gonna just run past them 200 push-ups a day, man. You doing it like that?
oh yeah, 200
Oh.
push-ups. Now I'm not doing 200 push-ups at the same time. We
No,
do 40.
understood. Yeah,
take a little
yeah.
break,
However many sets you need.
Indeed. But we getting the sets in, man. We're getting the sets
Yeah.
in, walking, running, just trying to make sure that the next 25, 30 years plus will be positive, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
Man, I gotta get my repetitions up, man. If you're doing it like that, man.
Yeah.
See, I get on this
It's-
mode
it's
where I'm gonna
me.
bust out 200, and then it's like, okay, the next day I do it. By about day 4 or 5, man, I fall off, man. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Then I'm down to
You know what,
100.
It all starts in the head, man. Once you change your mind, once you decide to do something, you just do it. And health is important. I kind of fell off for many years. I mean, I was running 5 miles a day in my mid to late 30s, and kids come, and life does what it does, and when you start walking up them steps and you suck and wind, it's time to make that change again. So that's where I am right now.
Man,
you gotta
one flight of
stay fit.
stairs, man. One flight of stairs might do me in, man.
Ah,
I've been looking
Nah,
for my
I'm running up the
inhaler and
stairs.
shit, man. I be like, where that
Trying to stay
Primatine
away
Miss,
from that,
baby?
Indeed.
For real, man.
But that's what's happening, man. It's about eating well, exercise and keeping your mind right. Particularly in today's time, we got a lot of stuff going on. Pandemic. Never thought I would use that word in my lifetime more than once, but now you're hearing it, seeing it, feeling it, every day. In a manner that I think for this generation, and there's multiple generations, right? You got Generation X, you got the millennials. I don't know who comes after the millennials, but then you got the baby boomers behind us. This is a particular moment, that I think it's kind of forcing us to step back and really take heed and notice about, what life is and what it could be. And, coming up out of this pandemic, not that we're out of it, but thinking about who we want to be. What does this country want to be? What does the world want to be? Because everybody's being affected. We ought to be better,
Yeah.
particularly, with the last clown show that took place, from a governmental perspective, we need to do better,
Clown show,
period.
definitely.
Living a good life. Like I said, man, if you don't have health, you don't have anything. Everybody's on that paper chase. Everybody's trying to figure out what they want to do. Everybody wants to be a millionaire. But if you don't have the energy, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, if you're not there, you can, and again, it all starts with health. So, folks kind of trip on Dr. Sebi, but Dr. Sebi's like, listen, get that mucus up out your body. And the
Facts.
man lived a good life, and the folks who he was assisting, they've lived a good life. So you got to take your vitamins, you got to eat the vegetables, you got to eat fruits and nuts and things that are really going to help your body, do what it's supposed to do. So again, It's not easy because in this society in particular, we get real comfortable because everything is microwavable, right? Everything is at our fingertips. And oftentimes, if we haven't been given the right way or shown the right way in terms of engaging our bodies, which is our temple, we sometimes miss out on opportunities and we might not be here as long as we ought to be. And particularly for those who have gifts, which is everybody. Everybody's
Yeah.
got a gift. Everybody has something to give to the world. You want to be here to be able to give it, you know?
Yeah, because man, like I'm with the Dr. CB diet, man. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
believe in it. I like I can sit here and listen to his look at his presentation and see the science that's there. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's all facts. All medicine in the world comes from only you only got the minerals and ingredients that the earth has to offer to put in medicine. It's all from plants. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So once you understand that, you just can go to the plant. You don't have to how to manufacture this thing and that thing and everything. You know what I mean? If you could live off the plants,
Right.
it's the discipline part though. For me, it's like hard to like. It's just again back to what you said. It's the mind. You gotta have your mind right, and it's easy.
To have your mind right, that comes with proper thinking, being, given different things to think about, being given different things to ponder upon. I want to go back to what you just said about the root or the essence of the earth that brings forth the idea and understanding of pharmaceuticals. One of the things that I learned in my study in terms of contraception
Mm.
in ancient Egypt, which is very interesting.
Mm.
Uh,
Do
it
tell.
was practiced. It was practiced, and what would happen? You would have the acacia bush mixed with honey that would be deposited within the woman, and that would actually eradicate a woman from being pregnant. Now, this was written on one of the ancient papyri from a health perspective in terms of being able to or not get pregnant. So you had the acacia bush, the acid, if you will, in the acacia bush would eradicate the essence of the sperm, and the honey would actually catch the sperm. It would stop its mobility, if you will. So the idea of contraception has been around for quite some time. But again, when you start looking at understanding where this knowledge and
Hold
wisdom
on, man.
understanding
Hold
the earth
on.
comes from,
Hold on right there, man. Did I just hear you say the honey slows down the mobility of the sperm?
it would essentially the semen would get caught in the honey, and then the
Oh,
acidity of the acacia bush would eradicate the ability for
oh,
the man to get the woman pregnant. That's not me.
oh.
Do the research. And listen, like I tell my students,
Damn.
don't believe a word that I tell you. Look it up. Do the research.
That's game
Do the
right there.
research.
Party people, I told y'all you was going to hear something for the first time tonight. Damn, that's game right there. So that ain't plan B, that's plan A right there. You know
That's
what I
plan
mean?
A. Yeah.
That's ahead
So,
of
and
time.
understand this, when you look at a lot of the pharmaceuticals today, a lot of pharmaceuticals come out of what have been around for thousands of years. This isn't
Yeah.
new. It's just that we don't even understand what took place. And then let's say like around the not even late 1700s, 1800s, when you start looking at the idea of patents and things of that nature, you have to ask yourself, where was all of this coming from? It's not like folks just came up with this, wonderful knowledge all of a sudden.
Oh
These are
yeah.
ideas that have
Everybody
been
all at
passed down.
once, huh?
It just doesn't happen that way. And I think when we kind of step back and you start peeling away some of the layers, and particularly within the United States and understanding how this society has been since its inception, you start to see a little bit differently. And I think the beauty, particularly in this moment right now, is that there's a lot more information that's coming out that allows for a conversation. So whether it be Black Lives Matter, folks recognizing, institutional racism and things of that nature, there are certain things that have to be dealt with. There's certain things that have to be shared. And what it does, it expands the knowledge and the wisdom that all of us are supposed to have. So it's not just specific to people of African descent.
Damn.
This is specific to humanity to understand how we're actually evolving and growing and could be as elevated as we were thousands of years ago. Because quite frankly, we ain't building pyramids. So when you start looking at what was done in the past and what can
Right.
be done in the future, if we open up ourselves, we might be able to do some things in a greater manner that's really assisting to all. That's just me.
Wow. Wow. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, what was I correct in calling you some type of Da Vinci coder, right?
Okay, so
Explain.
I'm gonna say yes. So let me kind of explain when you say that.
Okay.
When I explain what I do, I normally tell people, if you've ever seen the Da Vinci Code, that's what I do. And essentially, when you saw the Da Vinci Code, the Tom Hanks character was this code cracker with these signs and symbols and things of that nature. And that's exactly what I do. I crack codes. I deal with ancient signs and symbols, specifically coming up out of ancient Kemet during the Middle Egyptian or during the Middle Egyptian period. And there's some things that through what was shared then, we can actually look at today's society, specifically within the United States and its governmental manner in which was put together from an urban plan landscape, if you will.
Yeah.
And we can see where these ideas come from. And only if you know these ancient ideas can you actually see it. So, in that capacity, the way that I proved it, my master's is in African and African American studies with a focus and the utilization of semiotics, which is the study of signs and symbols. And through the study of semiotics and recognizing what these symbols represent, what the meaning is behind them, and how they're actually utilized, you can see a particular conversation that the United States government is having within the actual urban plan of this country from an ancient African perspective that no one really talks about. And that is not conspiratorial. That is actually a truism that can be read, through my thesis, if you will, because it was embraced, so therefore it's accepted and embraced by the academic canon. But more than that, common sense and a lot of the information that I share, it really hadn't been done before. I mean, this isn't about, well, it kind of looks like this. No, this is utilizing language. This is utilizing mathematics. This is utilizing theoretical frameworks and methodologies that really bring forth knowledge and wisdom that heretofore really hadn't been seen nor even looked at in that particular manner.
Okay. So so basically, you are looking at ancient communications, basically.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ancient communications
And
specifically
and let me
through
just ask
particular
oh, go
papyri.
ahead. No. Go ahead. What was you gonna say?
No, I was just going to say ancient communications through, at least within this study. So just let me give a quick background. So my background is on studying the urban plan of Washington, D.C., the actual street layout. And within the actual street layout, I actually rediscovered two ancient Egyptian faces etched in the layout of Washington, D.C. And those particular
What do you mean
faces
etched in the
actually,
layout? What do you mean etched in the layout?
literally how the streets were created. So if we're looking at a map, or if we're looking, let's say, utilizing Google Earth, when you look at a particular part of Washington, D.C., you can see two faces etched in stone or etched in the actual urban plan. And with that particular urban plan, if you juxtapose it to three particular ancient Egyptian, or more properly Kemetic papyri, which is the paper that these ancient ideas were written on, you can literally see where the ideas for Washington, D.C. came from.
Whoa. Whoa. What the hell? So
So
you do you think that was do you think that that was passed through like what through chromosomes, or you just think the knowledge really got handed down like from
the knowledge
I don't
was
even know what the how
in.
to ask that really.
So that's a good question, because that's what had to be proven, at least part of the methodology in terms of, well, how did this information actually make it into the urban plan of Washington, D.C.? Because it's not just like somebody just said, well, we're going to sit down and, we're going to use these particular ideas. It was more specific than that, if you will. So let's look at Benjamin Banneker, right? So Benjamin Banneker is known as the individual who really put the city together, right? But then you
Hmm.
had Pierre L'Enfant, who was the original, or considered the original person that was putting the urban plan together with George Washington, right? With Thomas Jefferson, but he was the point person. However, because of his attitude, he wasn't easy to get along with. At least that's what the story is shared, or how the story is shared. And he was actually literally kicked off the team, so to speak. And why they chose Benjamin Banneker, I have no idea. However, when you look at Benjamin Banneker and his particular background, essentially being associated with the Dogon, in terms of where his family tree supposedly came from, you start to recognize that there was a level of understanding about astronomy. And of course, he was known for, putting together clocks and, almanacs and things of that nature. So his level of understanding mathematics and things of that nature, it made him a perfect fit to, take Pierre L'Enfant's space or his place. But here's what's interesting. With all the people during the 1700s, why a person of African descent? Why would they choose him and not someone else who, a European who would have had the background to actually do what Pierre L'Enfant was, whether, he came from the United States or the burgeoning United States or from Europe. So, when you start asking these questions, it leads to more questions. So here's what's interesting, and not to be all over the place, but what most people don't know about Benjamin Banneker is we would never know about Benjamin Banneker at all. The only reason we know about Benjamin Banneker is because there was a check stub in Thomas Jefferson's effects that showed that Benjamin Banneker actually worked on the team in terms of putting the urban plan of Washington, D.C. together. That's the only reason we know about Benjamin.
Damn. Really?
Now that's through the research, man. And again, that's all, in the book, if you will.
Wow.
And then the other piece is the day Benjamin Banneker died. Now remember, he wrote all these almanacs. He had clocks that he created, right? He worked on the urban plan of what was to become America's capital. The day that he died, when he was being buried, they burned his home down. That had all these almanacs, that had all these clocks, that had all this information that we'll never know what was left in his home. And again, don't take my word for it. Do the research.
Do
And
the
see,
knowledge, people. Do the knowledge. Oh
so
man,
these,
really? They
yeah.
burnt this shit
So
down?
these, yeah. I mean, and it's sad because we will never know what was there. So again, we're looking at the foundation of the urban plan of America's capital, and an individual who had, a huge impact. I mean, essentially, he started creating the city in the southern part of Washington, D.C. And again, there were these different ideas that were incorporated. Now, this doesn't mean that Benjamin Banneker was the only person that incorporated these ideas. And I have some thoughts about that. It is my estimation that 3 particular papyri were utilized to incorporate into the city, but to get the gravitas, to get the spirit of Africa, they needed a point person or a point African to set the foundation or that cornerstone for what this country would actually be built upon. Because essentially what the founders were looking to do, based upon ancient Egypt, they wanted to make sure that this society, this republic, would last as long as these ancient African societies did. That's what we're
Wow.
looking at.
That right there is crazy. So I guess I'm still trying to understand about the knowledge passed down.
The
Do you
transfer.
do you feel like it is innate in us, or do you feel like it was due to his studies and just his individual genius that gave him just gave him the know-how?
You're speaking about Benjamin Banneker,
Yeah.
right?
Uh huh.
I think he had a particular genius, if you will, that was natural. He had a natural, predilection toward, the sciences, if you will, particularly mathematics, as well as astronomy, because he stayed on his back, sighting different spaces within Washington, D.C. with certain constellations. Now, again, he could not be the so-called person to kind of create all of this. There had to be individuals who would have to sign off on what he was doing. Again, we're talking the 1700s. We're talking during the time of the enslavement of African people in this country. So we recognize that he could not have done this alone. He had to get a pass, right?
Right.
So when you start looking at George Washington, who was also a surveyor, when you start looking at Thomas Jefferson, who actually got into very arcane sciences, if you will, dealt with ancient Egypt, spent a lot of time in France. And of course, during this moment in time, you have Napoleon Bonaparte, who's coming up out of Egypt with all this knowledge, and then an understanding that one of the first countries to recognize the United States. Most folks, it's Morocco, but then like right behind Morocco, it's France that's recognizing the United States. You have Thomas Jefferson going over to France. You have Benjamin Franklin going over to France, and there's this, European pollination based upon what's coming up out of ancient Egypt. And a lot of this information is finding its way and deposited in the essence of what would become America. However,
Now, what do you think about that though? What made France attractive, or what? How did it make its way to France?
well,
What was
oh,
special about
okay.
France? Yeah.
When you look at France and France's whole idea of liberty, if you will, just as the United States speaks to freedom and all that kind of good stuff. Quite frankly, the French were over up in Africa for a very long time, much longer than the United States. And not just France, you also had Germany, and you're talking about individuals who spent the better part of the 1800s in Africa. I mean, you're looking at, let's say, if you're looking at the Balfour Agreement and like the splitting up of Africa, and you have these different European countries going in and slicing and dicing the continent,
Right.
and not really having a level of respect for the peoples who were there because there were no boundaries, right? African folks just, we traveled, we did what we did, and the manner
Yeah.
in which we had done. So again, you're talking about a whole different mindset that was disrupted, and until this day, we don't necessarily understand what all that disruption was, but we're dealing with the after effects of that, and then having to kind of sift through a lot of what's been lost in the history, and then making sure that we understand it, and we're giving it in a proper manner, so that it's not this conspiratorial or this kind of hocus pocus spookism kind of thing, but where
Right.
it's extremely relevant, where it's understood, and we're able to really connect the dots that allow us to understand the why of who we are today. And it's an amazing conversation when you start thinking about it. It's a conversation that can piss you off, because anybody who's read this book, Redefining Rufus, which is about sexual violence against Black men during the enslavement process. I mean, there are things that we're still dealing with. But again, with dealing with this negativity, with dealing with what's going on today, there's also a lot of love. There's a lot of understanding. There's a lot
Right.
of depth, knowledge that still is not only within us, but is expressed by others in a country that in many instances to this day still rebukes us. So when we go to the White House, right, when we go to Washington Circle, when we go to the Library of Congress, when we go to the U.S. Supreme Court, you're looking at the historical and cultural functionality of Africa being inserted into this land. And in many instances, we're never taught about this.
Right.
So imagine if, I'm in elementary school and yeah, we learn about George Washington, but then we learn about where George Washington got the idea from. So now it's no longer just, Europeans came through with this great idea, but there is this cross-pollination and depth of knowledge and wisdom and understanding that's coming from different cultures, and particularly from an African perspective, which has always been dismissed, disrespected, and in many instances denied. We can't do that anymore. And I think as we move into the so-called age of Aquarius, because we're moving up out of Pisces, there's a revelation that's taking place, if you will. And these ideas, these thought processes, the knowledge is coming. And you got to, we as a culture and we as a country and literally humanity in general has to deal with this, because unfortunately,
Got to deal with it. Got to deal with
yeah,
it.
and that's where I am in my life. So literally, this has been my walk for 25, 30 years. I mean, when I met you in college, this is where I was, but I had no idea that this is what I would be gifted, because first and foremost, I ain't that smart. There's got to be some luck involved. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm prepared. I've done this scholastic study and all that
Dedication
stuff.
to the game, baby. That's what it is, man. It's the
Indeed.
dedication, man.
Indeed, and I'm gonna tell you, when you're able to see, and I'm kind of like putting the cart before the horse. I'm probably saying stuff I shouldn't even be saying
When
now,
you're
but
able to see what?
when you see when you see the foundation for the U.S. Capitol in Africa, when you understand what the Statue of Freedom really represents, it's very humbling. It's humbling on so many levels, because the idea is so much larger than most of us could even imagine. And then to take these ideas and deposit them in a space and a place and not even have a cultural connection to it is damn near blasphemous in terms of what was done to people of African descent. The beauty, however, is in recognizing that the knowledge and wisdom was actually given, extended, and also extremely respected by Europeans in the 1700s who could not deny what they had to incorporate for the idea of a republic based upon the foundations of a democracy to expand in the manner in which it is. For these other ideas to actually be shared literally brings this country to a much greater status. And much of what's taking place right now, but unfortunately, with the killing of black men, black women, and this negativity, if you will, it's bringing about a much needed conversation and much needed knowledge, such as this conversation that we're having here, that in many instances, when you incorporate the internet and how many people can potentially see, it changes everything. It changes the manner in which we as human beings need to engage one another. And, for me, the essence of the idea coming up out of ancient Kemet called Ma'at, like truth, justice, and balance and righteousness. Until we actually all do that, and whether one is a Christian, Muslim, Jew, a Taoist, I mean, I don't care what you believe in, even if you don't believe in anything, the level of respect and harmony that has to be had so that we can all do what we're supposed to do and give what we're supposed to give. Until then, a lot of folks not going to be blessed. And there's going to be a lot of folks that get blessed. A lot of folks not going to see because they don't want to see. But then for those who have eyes, they will see. And for those who care to hear, they will hear. And as such, the world ought to get better. But until then, I just want you to think about this. Mm-hmm. We all know that Isaac Newton is the individual who supposedly came up with the idea of gravity. He's sitting under a tree, the apple falls down, he gets the physics, idea. Now, I'm just saying this. Imagine seeing how Isaac Newton gained his understanding of physics etched in stone in Africa, but it's an ancient African sitting under an apple tree, and he's figuring out the essence of physics. Now, I'm just saying, imagine that, right? Because then that's a game changer in terms of the manner in which history has come down to us. So you're
saying there's an example of the exact same realization from ancient Africa?
I'm gonna say on this show, just imagine that. Just imagine that. And catch the third book.
And catch the third book. Oh, damn, you pushing me to the third one, nigga. Damn. Let me ask you this question. I got a question. You've been to Africa, right?
Yes.
What did you learn about your people here when you went to Africa?
Interesting question. I don't think I've ever had that posed to me. So let me answer it this way. The first time I went to Africa, I was in 11th grade. I was an exchange student to West Africa, to Senegal and the Gambia. And it changed my life, quite frankly. It's probably the reason why I do what I do now and why I feel the way that I do. My father had gone to Africa back in like 1974. So he had gone to Ghana, Nigeria, and a couple other places. So, that is like one of these early memories for me. So I was probably in like maybe second, third grade, maybe third, fourth grade when he went. And it was a big thing in our family. A lot of folks were feeling it. A lot of folks weren't feeling it. But my father had this particular cultural understanding of self. And I think he had to go there to find himself in a manner that I understand now when I had the opportunity to go, particularly when I didn't go with him and I went on my own. I ended up, going to Egypt and, a couple other places around the world.
Right.
So what he gave me in terms of his example was that there's more to me that's not here in America. And for me to get that, I got to go back home. Okay. Period. Full stop. Right. Okay. Because, Europeans of whatever background, they go home too. Yeah. But for us, it was kind of taboo. 70s, like, what are you talking about this black stuff? Africa. I ain't African. I'm from Detroit. That kind of thing. So I think it's become a bit more embraced and a lot more understanding that for people of African descent to really have a better perspective about self, you have to go to the continent, even though we might not know specifically where we come from. Now, to answer your question about what I learned about us here by going to Africa, man, we do the same thing here that we do back on the continent. We cook out, we families get together, we get down, and the music is the same. And some of the calls and the way that, the expressions are the same, even though the languages might be different. We the same people, just separated by, a horrific experience. But I'm going to say this.
Damn, that's beautiful.
The biggest impact in terms of learning about us here is when I was at Gorée Island, or what they call Île de Gorée. So in French, it's Les Maisons d'Esclavage, right? It's called the House of Slaves, because there are no slave castles. So like when you talk about Elmina, sometimes they talk about, Elmina's a castle. Damn that. It's not a castle. It's a dungeon. It's not, a castle is something to be glorified. A castle is something where, good things happen and there's this government and positivity.
Beautiful.
There are no slaves. You know what I'm saying? These are dungeons. These are places of ill repute. So in Senegal, well, off the coast of Senegal, you have Les Maisons d'Esclavage, which means the house of slaves. And in going into this space, and I have to speak this man's name because many people don't know who he is. For many years, he was the caretaker of Les Maisons d'Esclavage. His name was Joseph Nadaye. I'm going to say it one more time because his name needs to be remembered. Joseph Nadaye. When I first met him, I was 16. I was a junior in high school, and I took French, but I didn't know French. And when I heard him speak, it allowed me to understand not only what a griot is supposed to do and what a griot is supposed to be, but how beautiful the story is supposed to be told, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, and how much of the information you're supposed to remember so that you actually have the ability to pass it on in a manner that no one ever forgets. Now, when this man spoke, there was a melodious manner in which he delivered the information about what took place in this dungeon, right? In this Les Maisons d'Esclavage, in this house of slaves. And it was nothing less than horrendous. It was nothing less than scary. And then when you were in this space, recognizing what was taking place in these different rooms, his speech, with the interpreter giving us what he was speaking, with his heartfelt delivery, and then being in the room where children were kept, being in the place where women and young girls were raped, being in the space where you had rebellious Africans who would be put in this small area and chained. And this is what I'm getting to in terms of what I learned about us. Where the rebellious enslaved Africans were put, and normally these were men, there was a chain that was wrapped around the this one hand. And over the years, you could see where there was this movement where whoever was chained was trying to get the chain up off of them. But it had been for hundreds of years. So when you see this digging, if you will, of the chain into stone, you recognize how many people were chained up in this space where these so-called rebellious Africans would be.
Damn.
Now, you have what is also
one person didn't do that, right?
It would happen over many years. Damn. Because the grooves are so deep into the rock, into the stone.
Right.
So then beyond these 3 places or 4 places that I just shared with you, you have what's called the door of no return. And most people who go to Gorée Island, they will tell you it is an emotional experience. And me, like many others who have gone there from America, you're going to cry.
Damn.
You're going to, because you feel your ancestors.
You can feel it, huh? In the air.
So let me juxtapose real quick before I finish. When I went to Hawaii, I went to Pearl Harbor, and I didn't think I was going to feel anything. When I got to Pearl Harbor, they give you the story and they tell you, this is a very, a place where you have to be respectful. They give you the movie and all that kind of stuff. So then when you go out and you're above the ships and you're looking down into the ocean and you recognize that there's all these servicemen who have died for America, for our freedoms and so forth. I didn't think I was going to feel anything, but I did, because you got souls there. You got thousands of souls. But when I went to Africa and what I felt there, in terms of the misery that was taking place, in terms of these individuals being ripped from their homes and then being put on this long walk onto this ship, and then for this 3 to 4 month voyage only to come here to be seasoned and to be ripped and killed and maimed, and to have the essence of their knowledge and wisdom and what it was that they come from to be taken from them. When my father, my sister, and myself looked out over the Atlantic Ocean through this door of no return,
Mm.
we were the first three people in our family to do that. And we don't even know if that was our point of departure. And we don't know where we came from in that moment. So, in terms of your question, what did I learn
You could
about?
feel it in that moment. You could feel.
Oh,
You could
no doubt.
feel the presence.
If you don't feel it, you have been desensitized to
Oh,
yourself.
oh, it's a cold game if you don't feel it, huh? It's like, damn,
If
man, you
you
have
don't, and
literally
it's not like you got to go there and say, "Oh, I'm feeling." No,
right.
even if you haven't studied yourself, if you just understand just a little bit and have a little sense of remembering from whence you've come, there's no way that you can't.
Right,
So
right,
as
right.
we look out
Damn.
over the Atlantic Ocean, me recognizing the movement of my family specifically, but most African Americans in general, I understand why we have issues. You can't go through that and not have issues.
Yeah, you
You know,
can't.
you can't go through it and think that you're just going to be okay. And this is
Impossible.
what we're dealing with. And I understand. Here's the deep part. That's just getting to the coast before you get on the ship.
Yeah,
You're
that's
not
just to
even
get.
over here in
Yeah,
America.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
not in the Caribbean.
yeah,
So
yeah.
again, now that's the intense part, right? That's the, why would you, how could you, and all that kind of good stuff, right? And we understand there were Europeans as well as Africans that were part of this transatlantic slave trade. Now, there was still knowledge that was coming from these spaces. I don't care if it's, the University of Saint Croix, which is commonly called Timbuktu. I don't care if you're talking about Nigeria or the Yoruba people, the Ghanaian people. You had all these spaces and places that had cities, had
Right.
lighted streets prior to Europe doing this now. Because remember, by the time we get to Europe, particularly during the 15 and the 1600s, we're talking the Dark Ages. But it was only because of the Moors, the black Moors, that brought the knowledge that actually civilized Europe. No disrespect, but that's the truth. That's not me. Do the history, do the knowledge, and understand what it is. So now, as we fast forward and as we're talking about Washington, D.C., the idea of a republic based upon the foundation of a democracy, it's not coming out of George Washington. It's not coming out of the Continental Congress. It's coming up out of an African thought process that many of these Europeans understood and was inculcated into the very urban plan that we so enjoy today. And this is within the essence of what Black folks have been through in reference to the transatlantic slave trade and Europeans coming into power and utilizing this knowledge, and in many instances, keeping that information away. So,
Let me ask this. Let me ask this. How did the? Dang, I got some feedback. You hear some feedback?
nope, you clear to me, man.
Damn, it's just all of a sudden. Hey, so look, here's the question I have. Um, how did the information travel around Africa? I mean, I can assume like, hey, somebody rode up on a horse. I mean, like, literally. You know what I mean? Because if things, if I would just say one of our greatest moments, would be, what happened in Egypt and it spread across the world. You know what I mean? How did it spread across the continent, and then how informed was the continent of Africa before it was infiltrated?
I would say, the way that the information, was passed on. I mean, we look at Egypt as being like this only bright spot
Right.
in Africa, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But Egypt is the youngest daughter, of many other, great societies. I mean, you have to go to the south, and even though Egypt is in the northeast corner, but you have to go into Nubia, which is today commonly called the Sudan. And at the end of the day, when you look at what Kemet, or what is commonly called Egypt, how it became what it was because of what was going on in the south. So then now we're into the Sudan. You go south of that, now we're starting to get into Ethiopia. You
Mm-hmm.
go to the west of that, now we're talking Uganda, we're talking Kenya, Tanzania, now we're talking the Great Lakes region. You go further south from there, you have Mount Patapa, which is commonly called South Africa now. So, of course, in South Africa, or that part of Africa, if you will, you have, folks are smiting iron, and creating, spears and things that, hadn't even been thought about, for thousands of years. So it wasn't just Egypt, right? It's all these other places and spaces, including West Africa. When you start looking at Senegal and the Gambia and Togo and what would become Angola and all these other places and spaces, right? I mean, there were amazing peoples and amazing civilizations that we don't even know about. Forget about the ones that we know. We're talking about
Right,
the ones that are
right.
even more ancient. So, like case in point, and I'm gonna go back to Kemet, or what we commonly know as Egypt. You talk about the first dynasty, yeah, they were already doing great things, but you had pre-dynasties. The first idea of a democracy comes up out of what they call Ta-Nehisi, right? Which is the Sudan. But the Sudan doesn't get the kind of look that Egypt gets because most people are kind of focused on that. But there's such a larger conversation that needs to be had, and all of this information informs us in terms of, I mean, I'm just going to say it, the why and the how of America. It's just that because the manner in which these ideas have been extended to us, the cultural specificity in terms of its African origins has never really been understood. And I mean, and that's just a tautology that as we move forward as a country and as the world moves forward in terms of embracing these ancient ideas, we'll come to understand it. And it's not just to say, hey, black folks put it together. We just happen to be the first folks on the earth. And that's real.
Yeah, we just happen to be the first folks on the
It could have
earth.
been anybody.
Yeah,
It,
born.
it, it, it could have been anybody.
Yeah, but
We
it
just
was
happen to
us,
be
born out of born out of a single cell. You know what I mean? Um,
indeed.
Now, look. So, do you think that? Um, do you feel that the continent of Africa developed simultaneously in different places, or do you think it was a single place that spread?
It's now that's hard to say. I think a lot of the currently the geneticists are really trying to figure that out right now. I believe that when we start looking at where we came from, a lot of what we're looking at might be in Ethiopia, but you also have some things that happen in Chad. Recently Chad has had some findings that are pretty, profound. But I think one of the things that we really need to focus on is the fact that it's the interior of Africa where these beautiful folks are coming from who literally populated the earth and literally went over into, East India, went over, into China, like the first Chinese dynasty is the Shang dynasty. And within the last 2 years, the top geneticist in China said that they are from Africa, that their foundations come from Africa. So, when you start looking at where we came from, there are many different places. And I think, archaeologists and geneticists are really trying to figure out, from whence we've come. And that is from humanity. And interestingly enough, I forget which top geneticist said it, but, we all African, just of varying hues, or we all come up out of Africa. And I think it's interesting because there was this debate between John Henry Clark and Mary Lefkowitz. And John Henry Clark started this particular debate by saying, I only debate my equals, all others I teach.
Doing it
And
like
yeah,
that,
it's a
huh?
classic line, right? And
That's
John
classic.
Henry
That's
Clark,
classic.
yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah.
and he wasn't to be trifled with. And Mary Lefkowitz, being a classicist, if you will, and many within that space had an issue or felt that there was this blackening or this wrestling, if you will, of particular truths. And as I said earlier, if we are open and from an academic perspective, right? So everybody's not going to be open because, everybody's in their own little fiefdom and, well, I know this and you don't know that. And oftentimes people aren't let into the academy to express their thoughts because now you bring something different. You don't have to rewrite the curriculum. Well,
Facts.
every time you turn a stone over up in Egypt or somewhere else in Africa, you're gonna be rewriting history. So I think as we become more comfortable with these facts, as we become more open with the contribution, if you will, we can get rid of the lies. So let me give you an example. January 6th, 2021, you had an
Who's
insurrection of individuals who stormed the U.S. Capitol.
Facts.
Now, back in the 90s, you had the Million Man March.
That's right.
You had these million black men who, if they would have stormed the Capitol, I'm thinking it would have been a very different outcome.
Right.
But here's what's interesting. Those million men represented the ancestors that actually built the White House, that built the foundation, or at least the urban plan of Washington, D.C., and were viewed in a way as not supposed to be there. Okay. Which has been, essentially what much of the experience of people of African descent has been in this country. Okay. We get that. January 6th, we see an insurrective move on a Capitol because a particular candidate didn't win. And you're looking at a particular type of privilege of ignorance, because had those folks been given a broader understanding of history, of true history, it would have helped them be cool. But because the knowledge and wisdom in this country, particularly from an educative perspective, is not equally given across the board, and this isn't about ill-equipped schools. This is about telling the truth. This is about equipping.
Yeah.
This is about equipping citizens with a particular understanding.
Yeah, so, exactly. Telling the full picture to everybody, the same picture to everybody. Yeah.
So what we witnessed on January 6th was an outcome of not speaking the truth, was an outcome of not sharing intellectual understanding as to who gave and extended what and how we all fit within this particular puzzle so that we can all move forward. Now, that's the kumbaya moment, right? But then if black folks storm that U.S. Capitol at any point in time, it's a different conversation. And until I think it was Chris Rock said, until I could be mediocre and get paid as much as a white man, I'm a believe in how I believe, So this is about just understanding who it is we are all supposed to be. It's more than just speaking truth to power. It's about understanding what contributions have been given and how can we actually move forward. Until then, everybody's going to be in their own fiefdoms. Nobody's going to come to the middle. There's not going to be any kind of conversation. And this is an issue of identity. It's an issue of identity in terms of what America is, what folks want America to be, and what America could be. And until, folks kind of step back and figure out, well, you know what? We need to extend a particular kind of olive branch so that we can move, right? But then you got some folks that's like, nah, I'm not really trying to take that olive branch because, there's always that gang. There's always the okie doke. And it's no different when you start talking about, let's say, taking a shot in our community. Most of us know we need to take the shot. But then for those who are of a particular age and a particular understanding, we remember Tuskegee, but we also remember other things that have taken place. So until there can be an honest dialogue, and I mean an honest dialogue, and people have to sit down and kind of stew, in their stuff. And until they can stew in their stuff and kind of come up out of it and just recognize that, we human beings and, we're going to be on this earth for a minute. Until then, it is what it is. But the truth still has to be told.
The truth has to be told, and the truth will set you free, party people.
Indeed.
The truth will set you free. I want to shift gears to South America.
Okay.
And a lot of what you see in Africa shows itself in South America.
Indeed.
And that is culturally, that is musically and sonically, that is, you see it in the people visually and physically, but then you can go back and look at some rituals. You can look at pyramids. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can literally look at pyramids, and they don't look exactly the same. But where else, you know what I mean? Where did that come from? You know what I mean? So, let's start with the pyramids. How do we get pyramids in South America? What do you
All right, I'm gonna
think?
tell you a story. I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm in Chichen Itza. All right, so Chichen Itza is, you got the ball courts, you got the temples, you have the big pyramid and what have you.
Wait.
Um,
Where is this?
this is in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
This is down there by oh, what's the big the tourist thing where the kids go for spring
Cozumel,
break? No, not Cozumel. Um,
Cabo.
oh, nope, not Cabo. I'm getting old. That's what's happening. I'm getting old. It's been a minute since I've been there.
Oh, you naming
Um,
some old shit? Tijuana, motherfucker.
Not Tijuana. It's down there by oh, Playa
uh,
del Carmen. There's oh
all
man.
that down there. Okay.
It'll come to me, but the name of the pyramid is Chichen Itza,
Okay.
and it was about maybe an hour or two ride from where I was. So I had on this red hat, right? And on the hat, it had this Greek letter pi on it. So I had my little fraternity hat, my chapter, that kind of thing, and had pi. Well, one of the mestizos, one of the brothers from Mexico, I'm on the bus, and he sees the hat, and he says, well, what do you know about pi? I said, well, pi built the pyramids. And then he says to me, and your people helped us. This is what the man says to me. And my response to him was, yes, the ones with the gold tipped spears. Now, to understand what that exchange was, one, you'd have to know the science behind the pyramids that were being built. So, of course, the idea of phi, which is the fingerprint of God, goes up in there, which is 1.618. Pi as well, which is 3.14, with an infinite number that comes behind that. And the foundation in terms of angles, circles, and squares, in terms of how these particular forts, edifices, if you will be built. Now, the exchange that me and this brother had, there was a level of respect because he, I'm wearing his hat with this particular insignia that he knew about. And then, of course, the historical perspective in terms of who built the pyramids. And the man said, and your people helped us.
Mm.
And I knew who the people were because in some of my studies, I know those Africans they're jet black with these gold spears that helped build the pyramids. So
Really
when you
though.
start talking about the cross culturalization, there's commentary and conversation about Africans being over here, of course, with the Olmec heads, which most people know about. But there's a lot more that's there. All right. So when I say a
Yeah,
lot more,
because here's the question: when Cortez and all them came, the pyramids were already there.
they were already there.
Yeah.
They were already there. So you talk about the folks coming from Spain. Now they're coming down,
Mm-hmm.
into Mexico, and these are
Mm-hmm.
these conquistadors, and now
Mm-hmm.
they're overthrowing. They're all looking for gold.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, you had Africans that had been going to South America for thousands of years. You had Africans who were coming to the United States for thousands of years. Now, that's not me. You got to read the books. They came before Columbus, right? The brother talks about um, what is that? Texas Longhorn cattle are not indigenous to the United States. They're indigenous to Africa. So
Mm.
how did the cattle get? There's fauna in that part of the country that's not indigenous to America or North America. It's indigenous to Africa. How did the fauna get here? So you have all of these researchers, all of these authors,
What is
all of
that?
these
Like a herb or
historians.
something?
No,
What is it?
a fauna could be any type of plant, if you will,
Oh, 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 oh,
Fauna.
oh, oh.
So I'm
Okay,
just
got you.
speaking about whether it be a flower, whether it
Oh,
be an
okay.
herb, anything that can be grown, if you will, out of the earth. However, certain fauna is only particular to certain spaces on the earth. So this is how, that particular author was able to say black folks were always already here. That's why he wrote, they came before Columbus. So again, these are conversations, and that's an old conversation. I think they came before Columbus might have been written, I don't know, maybe the 80s, somewhere around there. I'm not
Yeah,
sure. I
yeah,
don't
right.
remember. But again, you can get the book, you can do the reading. And so again, we continue to build on what's been, left behind for us to understand, to have this conversation about South America. So when you see these very black folks on the walls, just like you see black folks on the walls, in Egypt, it's like, well, where are these black folks coming from? And how long were they down there? And then here's what's deep. And I have a picture of this. We all know about these huge Olmec heads, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
In the Pacific?
I'm sorry, say it again.
They're in the Pacific somewhere, right?
No, they're not in the well, they're not on the Pacific side, but they're in Mexico.
Oh,
They're
okay.
these huge heads that were found, and it's like nobody understands how they got there, but they're huge. I mean, they're several tons heavy, right? It's ridiculous. Well, when I went to Egypt at the Museum of Antiquities, of course, they're building a much newer museum now. But in front of the Museum of Antiquities, there's this huge stone slab with these three faces, and damn if they don't look like the Olmec heads in Mexico.
Mm.
And again, you can't just say, well, this picture looks like this and this picture looks like that. But at the end of the day, this is more evidence that says we were all over the world. And again, this isn't just about Egypt, right? This is about Nigeria. This is Togo. This is Ghana, right? This is, Senegal. It's the Gambia. It's Tanzania. It's all these. We were traveling around the world for thousands of years, and unfortunately, we get pigeon-toed, between like 2 AD to now, when there were millions of years prior to 2 AD. And we have to really look at the expanse of time to understand how we've become who we are today. And like I said earlier, until we honestly, as humanity, have that conversation, everybody's going to be in their own corners, and we're not going to really know the truth. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a couple of libraries I have not been to, and I'm trying to get in. And these are the kind of libraries where they tell you can only take one sheet of paper and a pencil. And
Really?
they're gonna check you. They're gonna check your drawers to make sure that you're not trying to slide
Oh,
anything
you
in or
can't
slide
take
anything
one
out.
page out that mug, huh?
Exactly. And there's cameras all over the place, right? But
Wow.
but I think when you start going back to the beginning of this conversation, when you ask about, am I this, a Da Vinci kind of person? I am. When I saw the movie for the first time, I'm like, that's what I do. I didn't even realize it had a name, right? And there are very few semioticians out here. Now you have the philosophers, and they get into like Pierce and all these other folks who from like, let's say, the 1800s, early 1900s, got into signs and symbols. But when you step into the space that I've been very honored to get into, or step into, it literally opens you up to things that you wouldn't even imagine. And what I find to be most beautiful is the fact that the symbols are silent, but the amount of information that they share is louder than you can imagine. And at a point in time, in terms of dealing with signs and symbols specifically, there are no secrets. There are no secrets. However, you cannot add to nor take away from that which is being given to you, because then you change the whole message entirely. And that's not what our ancestors meant for us to do. Therefore, there's a particular level of knowledge that one must acquire to be able to engage this information, to ferret it out, and to understand specifically what's being said, what's being told, and where you are being beckoned to go. And I'm going to say that one more time: where you are being beckoned to go. Within the liberal arts and sciences, whether we're talking rhetoric, astronomy,
Right.
logic, right? All these
All
different,
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All that.
you
Mm-hmm.
take that into play. Those are nothing more than the building blocks of understanding, so that when you actually get to particular signs and symbols, you can actually apply your level of education to understand the silent conversation with humanity since time immemorial. It's a very special opportunity that all of us have to engage. So when you apply this knowledge of signs and symbols to Washington, D.C., literally it will take you back to Africa, and it will allow you to see and engage in a way in which our ancestors left this knowledge back home, for us to understand what it is that we're even experiencing in the United States, unbeknownst to us. Now, that's just from my perspective, right? From a person of African descent perspective. But it's a much larger conversation, because it's more than just African Americans who are in this space. It's this so-called e pluribus unum, right? Out of many, one. And we are all part of this pluribus, this many. And the one, if you will, trying to figure that out, right? The idea of that, this particular Latin phrase, is out of many, all these people, it makes up one nation. However, this one nation, if you will, is born out of something that is much larger, much older. And if the much older is understood, it can inform this space right now. And that's where this country is in this particular moment, with all of its horrendousness, all
Wow.
of its madness, and with its beauty, right? If we're going to be honest, then we need to have these conversations and be open to scholars who do have an understanding, and stop having individuals who are being blocked, if you will, from engaging the academy. So let me give you an example. Might not be the best, but when you look at what's going on with Cornel West,
Right.
and the fact that he's not being given tenure, I'm like, really? I mean, the man's done what he's supposed to do. I don't know and nor understand the politics behind that, right? But there's some politics that's going on. When you stop, let's say, younger scholars from being given certain tools, or if you're not exposing them to certain books, if they have to stay within these particular parameters, if you will, then really we're not learning anything. We're regurgitating what those in power want us to know.
Right.
When knowledge and wisdom is supposed to actually expand and elevate and make sense of the question, but that's not what's being done. So when that's done, when we step there, that's when this country grows up. And until then, it's going to be what it is. And that's just, again, that's just a perspective. It's just a perspective.
Okay. So let's stick with perspective, right? So much of what began in the beginnings of time or whatever got passed through all of history, whether it's the knowledge, languages. We talked about navigation. We talked about, the pyramids, everything, right? Let's talk about what we passed down from the perspective of love and like nurturing, and like how that passes through the generations.
Wow, brother, first and foremost, thank you for saying what you just said, or asking that question. How do we pass on love? I got to do a shameless plug. I literally just wrote a chapter on love and intimacy from a Black male's perspective. So,
Okay.
and you didn't know that. Like we didn't even talk about that,
No,
right?
we did not.
I have is a beautiful scholar. Her name is Tangi Crossfield, and she has a she's put together what's called the Love Manifesto. And she's asked, I don't know if it's like all scholars or, who she's asked, if you will. I'm under the assumption that most folks have an undergraduate degree, graduate degree, and there's this idea of what is love. So we were able to write about whether it was, love from an intimate perspective, the love of business, the love of children, that type of thing. We were able to kind of choose, if you will, these different ideas. And there were about maybe 16 questions that she wanted us to answer after we wrote or chose what it was that we were going to write about in reference to love. So for me, and my life is really interesting right now. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but I was initially going to write about business and my love of business. Went to school, undergraduate degree marketing, graduate degree in African American studies. So it was funny because Tangi said to me, "You ought to write about love, and it might be cathartic for you." So, and I'm looking at. So I didn't really. I was paying attention, but I wasn't listening. So I get home, and I'm going to answer your question about how we pass on love. So I get home, and I start thinking about the love of business. I'm like that. It wasn't moving me. But I've always been a man who has loved the idea of love, falling in love, being in love. And I said, that's what I need to write about. So, I'm a kid who grew up in the 70s, born in the 60s, grew up in the 70s. And I said, you know what? I'm going to talk about love and intimacy. So the name of the chapter is called I Got So Much Love to Give, which is a take off a Barry White song from like 1973. So I was 6 when that song came out. I didn't know about how much love I had to give, right? I'm a kid.
You ain't had none.
But I had no idea. So what I ended up doing, I took about maybe 10 to 12 songs from different artists and deconstructed the lyrics in reference to love and the intimacy that comes from Black men.
Okay.
And talked about not just the song, but how the nuance of the music, how the lyrics would affect us, but then more so how the essence of love through these songs expressed intimacy and then talked about love and intimacy of individuals and how that was expressed through song and how some of us got here anyway through them songs.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
when you talk
Facts.
when you talk about love and how do we pass that on, so there's like different facets of love. Of course, the highest being the essence of agape, right? Dealing with the godliness of love. Then we have, the mutual love, right? The love of our fellow human being, love for a brother, love for a sister, so on and so forth, love of our children. How do we pass this love on? Well, we have to understand what that is. Now, love is a verb, it's an action, right? So we have to, through demonstration, particularly for our children, be that example because that's how we learn everything. Now, unfortunately, a lot of folks don't get heavy dosages of love, or sometimes it might be given in a way that we don't understand, or like the
Yeah.
new thing
You
is,
don't
do
recognize
you
it.
understand my exactly? Or folks are talking about love language now. What's your love language?
Right.
These things have to be taught. These things have to be um, shown. And I think in terms of our young people, they need to see it. So let me give you an example. My daughter, at about 3, 4 years old, one day we were sitting in the living room. So she comes out, this bright eyed, just the essence of love. My daughter's my heart, as is my son. But she comes to the couch where her mother, myself, and her brother were sitting on the couch. And she goes, Mommy, Daddy, Jahi, we're family. And she gives us all this big hug at the same time. I cried because in that moment, I recognized that my daughter, number one, understood family at that age. Number two, she understood love because she gave us a hug. And I was extremely excited because we had demonstrated to her what love is. So
Mm.
therefore, as she grows, she'll understand what that's supposed to be. She understands the feeling because she received it as a young girl. She gets it now and she will get it as she grows. And in turn, she too will be able to extend that to her family if she's blessed to have one. So, in terms of how we do that, it's just that, man. We all have to be shown. And then again, we have to deal with all the mess that comes with who we become and who we are. And excuse my expression, we got to own our shit and then be the best that we can coming up out of that so that we can give the best to our kids. And we can't just say, oh, everything is love and it's going to be hunky dory. Nah. But when things get tough, it is that love that will sustain them. And I'm going to tell you right now, at 53, had I not gotten the love that I had when I was a child and as I was growing up and embraced and surrounded by family and friends, I wouldn't be able to have withstand what life has given to me because we all go through stuff. But it's that love that sustains us. It's that love that has to be shown and demonstrated. And in turn, we have to be it. We have to give it. And only in that instance, will we be able to extend that, to our children, to other generations. And even through whether it's song, whether it's through writing, whether it's through plays, whether it's through trips, whether it's through actually looking at them signs and symbols on them walls around
Right.
the world
Right.
to understand what's being expressed. And it's interesting because one day when I see you, I'm going to show you the word love etched in stone where you don't think it's supposed to be.
Wow. Well, the thing is, man, to me, love is like, it's like your battery. It's like love is the thing that keeps you alive. You know, um, it extends your life because it's just,
Mm,
I don't know. I look at it like I had a lady on my homegirl on my show, Daphne, talking about love and its vibration, right? Love is
mm,
a vibration, and that it shares the same vibration as divinity, whatever you consider to be, all created by whoever God is, whatever it is to you, right? The vibration is the same as love, and it's like without it, there's nothing. It's like I don't know, man. It just seems like the power. I feel like the power in our people is love. It's not the strength. It's not how fast we could run. It's not how good we could fight. It's not our strategy. None of that shit, man, overpowers just this thing called love that was literally created by us because it started by us. Because like you said, the world started with us. Not gonna say, "Hey, we're special." Ying, yang, yang. I'm not saying that, but hey, the world started with us, man. So the first love there ever was came
Mm.
from us. You
Here's
know.
what's interesting with you saying that. So you talk about vibration, and the Sanskrit word for love looks like a number three, and then it has like this like a half circle, and then like a U that's behind the three. Now, the sound that goes along with the Sanskrit word for love is Om, right? That's that vibration that you're talking about. Now, regardless of how love is said or expressed, there's always a vibration. There is this energy. And that energy can be seen etched in stone in different places throughout Africa. And I'll talk about the Sanskrit word, which is normally associated with East India. So, with that, in terms of recognizing this energy or recognizing the word love as we would understand it in the West or in the United States or other parts of Europe and so forth, or just around the world, this idea is extremely important because if it wasn't, it literally would not be a part of most of your high so-called ranking societies because at the end of the day it is like love is that ultimate, if you will.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Because we now, okay, we can talk about love, but then why these larger than life organizations are they now focusing on it, and in what way are they utilizing it? So to your point, when you engage this battery, because yes, love is a battery, as is hate, right? Because when we deal with the essence of physics, for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction. For
Hey, I
every up
believe
there's
in
a down.
mathematics, man. The universe is balanced,
Yeah,
man. For all the
there you go.
positive and negative, they're equal.
Yes.
Yes.
And what's interesting is when we get into, and I like what you just said, when you get into the mathematics of the universe, you got to get into the mathematics of the soul. When you get into the mathematics of the soul, you get into the mathematics of you and your relationship with the universe, and ultimately your relationship, not just with self, but with others. Now, what's interesting in that from a mathematical perspective, as it's shared rhetorically, when you would go through certain temples, it would say, "Man, woman, know thyself, so that you will know all men and women that come before you." This is the mathematics of love in terms of what's coming from the essence of the universe, which is divined into you and extended to others. Because essentially, whoever I am, whoever I can be, the best and the worst of who I am and who I can potentially be, is what others have the capacity to be as well, because we are all reflections of ourselves, because we are all reflections of the creator. And in understanding that in terms of engaging this essence of love, this is what moves humanity forward, or at least ought to. But because of much of our shortcoming, if we will, we oftentimes miss the mark. But the signs and symbols are always there to tell us these truths. Bottom line, end of story, full stop.
Whoo-hoo. Cold, cold, cold piece right there, man. Wow. Look, man,
You
on
know,
that note, my brother, man, I gotta just say thank you, man, for coming and joining me, man, and doing this and spreading this knowledge to the people, man. It's like we could go on with this stuff all night long, man. I
indeed.
definitely, I
Indeed.
definitely want you to come back. I gotta do my own homework so I can have some, so I even just know what to ask next time. You know what I mean? Why don't you tell the people what you got going on and where they could find you, or anything like that?
Okay. Well, right now I'm in the midst of finishing a book up for my fraternity. So for those brothers who are members of Kappa Alpha Psi, I got my third book for the fraternity will be out shortly. On another note, I'm about to reissue Egyptian Origins of Washington D.C. Volume One. That really speaks to the foundation that we talked about a little earlier today. However, I'm working on finishing within the next probably 3 to 4 months Volume Two, Egyptian Origins of Washington D.C. But that subtitle for Volume Two is "The Sacred Feminine and How Washington D.C. Births Knowledge and Law Through the Sanctity of an African Goddess."
Dang.
So, as a basic understanding, I'll be looking at the urban plan of Washington D.C. based upon the biological functionality of an ancient African woman and how she actually births knowledge and wisdom into what we now understand law, what we understand liberal arts and sciences and other aspects that literally through the actual street layout, I'm going to share the birthing of this child that we call law, the birthing of this child that we call knowledge and wisdom, and really showing you where these particular ideas came from an African perspective, and then actually show you an ancient U.S. Capitol and an ancient White House that actually exists, and you can witness it today. So that's
Wow.
what I'm working on. So these are the things that really, have resonated with my soul. This is the love that's been extended to me, and just understand this here. You talk about love.
Mm-hmm.
We go through some pretty hard things in our lives, and oftentimes we don't know what our life is going to do. We don't know where it's going to go. We don't know where it's going to lead us. And for whatever reasons, I've been given a gift. So it's my responsibility to finish this gift and to share it with as many people as possible. So with that being said, I want to say thank you for 30 plus years of friendship and being open to having me on your platform with your people. And just know I do want to come back. I do want to get you the first book. I'm going to get you that second book. And, some of the things I've already shared with you in terms of asking some other questions, because the rabbit hole is deep. The knowledge is amazing, and we all can benefit from it. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to
I
it.
love it, man. Because I feel like we can talk about just, the hieroglyphics for about 2 hours. You know what I mean? We can just keep going on and
That's
on and
a
on.
whole. We can talk about this on the next show, but just I want to remind you. I'm gonna say this. Oftentimes, it is said that you have to read in between the lines, right?
Mm.
I found God in between the lines of the hieroglyphs, and I'm gonna leave that right there.
Wow.
I'm gonna leave that right there, and we're gonna have we'll have a conversation, because the hieroglyphs are more than just what's to be read. If you understand it in its proper functionality, it's telling you where to go to engage heaven on earth.
Wow. Wow. Don't even
Yeah.
do me like that with the cliffhanger. Oh, I
And
love it, man. Yo, man,
you know,
listen, my big homie, man. Really, though. I really appreciate you, man. You always been the cool cat. You always been a guy that's been stand up, that don't change, don't act some new kind of way every time you see him, and all that old type of funny style stuff, man. I really appreciate it, man. It really means something, man. And you're well respected, and we all look up to you, man. And I just want you to know that, bro. And I just love what you're doing, and don't stop. You got to keep pushing, and let's get this knowledge out there, man. You know what I mean? For real.
indeed, man. Listen, love you, brother, and I appreciate you. Thank you for your kind words, man, and can't wait to come back again soon, real soon.
Man, I love you back, dog. Let me give you a hand clap for that on the way out, man. Let
That's
me
all
give
right,
my
man.
man a hand clap,
That's
man.
all right.
All
That's
right,
all
man.
right, man.
We out of here, dog.
All right, man. See you soon, brother.
All right, holla. Man, that's my OG homie right there, man. I gotta just say, man, I have so much pleasure in my soul, man, interviewing my guy right there, man. We're gonna bring him back for sure, man, with that loveliness, man. Let's take a quick break right quick, and I'll get right back to you, people.